Well, hello everyone. As I get my camera started, I wanted to welcome you to today's roundtable on RIA on the RIA market. For years, research reports and different market leaders have talked about this mammoth wave of change that's coming toward the industry. And finally, I think we all believe that the participants in this call, like, that wave is here. So gone are the days of the limited service offerings, ineffective use of technology, automatic double-digit market returns that we all experienced in the 2010s, and keeping the status quo. Navigating what we see today is going to take some ingenuity, some innovation, some a little bit different thinking, and really sort of turning the industry on its head a little bit about how you approach it. Now, to help make sense of this change, I can't do it myself, so I brought out some big guns to help explain that. Dr. Preston Cherry is the founder and president of Concurrent Financial Planning, head of the financial planning program, and director of the Charles Schwab Center for Personal Financial Planning at the University of Wisconsin Green Bay. Go Pack Go! Dr. Cherry has over 15 years of financial services and academic experience, including financial planning and investment management, and has published research in top journals. He is an Investopedia Top 100 Financial Advisor, a 2022 Think Advisor Luminary finalist, same here, and wealthmanagement.com 10 to watch in 2023. Now, if you look at his website, there's a quote that Dr. Cherry has. It says, "Let your life lead your money, not your money lead your wife." Next, we have Shannon Spotswood, who's the president of RFG Advisory, where she oversees all aspects of the firm of the future, which is RFG 2.0. Shannon has built a reputation for bold leadership during her 25 plus year 25 plus year in the financial services industry. And under Shannon's leadership, RFG was named Best Place to Work for Financial Advisors multiple times, named finalist for Investment News Innovation Awards in 2021, and multiple wealthmanagement.com Wealth Management Industry Awards. Financial Times named RFG Advisory a top 300 RIA, and Shannon was also named a 2020 Women to Watch honoree by Investment News, and was also finalist for the Advocate of the Year by Women in Asset Management in 2021. Now, those are a lot of accolades. This is just the summary version. If you go to their website, you can see the long list. Believe me, that's the abridged version of all the work that Shannon and RFG have done. Now, Shannon, I've looked up some media appearances that Shannon had, and the quote I found from her is, "There are very few opportunities where you can work in an industry that is so dynamic, which offers so many challenges, where you're shoulder to shoulder with some of the best and brightest." That's how Shannon views the industry, and that's why we've asked her to speak today. And last, we've got my friend Robert Sandrew from Integrated Partners, where he is the Chief Growth Officer. Integrated Partners was a 2023 Barron's Top 100 RIA firm. It's a national financial planning and RIA that helps support more than 200 entrepreneurial financial advisors and 150 plus CPA partners, overseeing over 13 billion, nearly 13 billion in advisory assets. Integrated has built an organization that's proven to be agile, adapt into an ever-changing environment, which is why we've asked Rob to be here today. And his specific role is helping overseeing the recruiting and growth initiatives for the firm. Now, here's a quote from Rob. "The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. The realist adjusts the sails." So that's the sort of wisdom you're going to get with here, folks. So if I can ask the panelists to turn on your microphones, turn on your cameras, and join me for today's discussion. Shannon, I think that's like the fourth or fifth time I've introduced you. How did I do this time?
You did great. And I will say the music tee up was on point.
Thank you. I was scrambling trying to figure out how to do that, but we made it work. So thank you. All right. So what we talked about is an industry and disruption, and I think we all have agreed that that's the case. And there's lots of different reasons. What we're going to do is sort of dive into it. Shannon, when we talked before, you said that the industry is moving headfirst into a new era. Can you describe for me what that new era is?
Absolutely. And thank you so much. It's great to be here with Rob and with Dr. Cherry and always with you, Ryan. This is one of the topics that we spend a significant amount of time talking about and thinking about as we designed, RFG 2.0. We are now in RFG 3.0. It has always been with an eye towards the RIA of the future and the tremendous amount of opportunity that is in front of all of us as a result of just this. We are in a collision of cataclysmic change in our industry. So to just set this table for where we are is, ours is an industry that is actually relatively new. We have a succession crisis. I think I'm going to start reframing this as a succession opportunity as a result of these first generation advisors that gave birth to our industry. So we're really only 30 years in on serving retail clients and defining what it means to work with an advisor. So we went through phase one, birth of the industry. And then we went through a very dynamic, exciting time that included a significant amount of private equity and growth capital taking notice of our industry and helping us institutionalize and really rapidly grow. And, we had this incredible wind at our sails from up into the right markets and a relatively stable environment that masked a lot of this change and allowed for the status quo to thrive. And we have now entered into a very distinct phase in our industry that can be characterized as focus on the client experience, focus on innovation, focus on differentiation. And a lot of people would say that we're in a period of consolidation, which we are as a result of this succession opportunity. But if we frame up a little bit bigger and we acknowledge that the majority of the assets still in our industry, 67%, are in the wirehouses, they're not independent yet. So I would say that this third phase of our industry is definitely marked by innovation. It's going to be marked by differentiation. Ooh, am I like on 4th of July fireworks here in the
Hey,
new? I
I
love
always think
it.
the fireworks just followed you around, Shannon. But
Exactly. And we're in an era of explosive growth and independence if we're set up in the right way.
so, Dr. Cherry, you actually serve as a practitioner. You serve in both the nonprofit world, also in coaching and teaching the next future, the generation of financial planners. Sort of, how do you see the overall state of advice where we currently sit?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me. Wow, I can't follow the fireworks that Shannon just got. I mean, my goodness. But I would I would say we're more advanced than we were, and so I know a lot of folks like to touch on where we are as far as the state of advice, and it's not perfect. Nothing is. I think we're trending in the right direction. I mean, from what it was 10 years ago, especially 20 or 30 years, we're just not focusing on investments. And let me share this. Even though we're not focusing on investment, this is why we have far to go as far as a complete profession, is that people are still asking this question in Reddit threads and stuff. They're asking, they're like, why do I need an advisor? And what is an advisor going to do to you? Why am I paying this 1%? What's included in that? So we have a lot of areas to improve on with the state of advice and where we are and where we need to go.
I I have, like the authorities have somewhat gone after the TikTok financial advisors, people who are basically doing the old school pump and dump schemes. Hey Rob, let's talk about and Shannon touched on it, the sort of differentiation and complexity. So you used to go to your advisor, maybe you'd roll over an old 401k, maybe you get some life insurance. That doesn't really stand up to what the clients are looking for. How has that changed?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure as always. Tough act to follow between Shannon and Dr. Cherry here, but I think Shannon, you summed it up very nicely. You kind of stole some of my phrases I was going to use, which is around this kind of collision of there's just so much going on. We've got political unrest, we've got the markets, so much uncertainty, and things have changed in the last like handful of years. Advisors were kind of cruising along, and things have certainly, in terms of speed bumps, and they've had, as Ryan, you said with that quote, adjusted the sails. We're in a very different place today than we were 5 years ago, and that coupled with this massive transfer of wealth that's going on, really the clients are asking for more. And to Dr. Cherry's point, I mean, the business we were talking about this earlier in a pre-call. It's just amazing to see how much the independent side has evolved over the years. I recall when I first started in the industry, I actually called on RIAs, and it was $100 million RIA was massive. And today, there are how many firms that are over 100 billion in the space, and the complexity of these firms and the capabilities and the type of clients that they're serving. I think it's just the beginning. We're at the forefront of this. And that coupled with the fact that you're seeing the significant transition into the independent space and all the various flavors of independence, we're setting ourselves up, I think, in a very, very solid position to handle some of, again, this transfer of wealth that's happening, the complexity behind it. And, it's a very exciting place to be right now.
Yeah, so just for reference, Rob, so I had some recent RIA database contact information. So for RIAs that have 100 million to 500 million, there's 8,300 contacts.
Right.
For 500 million to a billion, there's 3,500 contacts, and for 1 to 100 million, there's 9,700 contacts. So that's how much how big the industry has gotten, which is significant. Let me play devil's advocate for a second. So if I'm an advisor who's been in this business, I founded my firm, let's say around the early 2000s. I got through the great financial crisis. I rode the wave of sort of the post-financial crisis boom. I built a $250, $340 million firm. Why can't I just keep doing what I'm doing? What's the harm that's going to come from my firm? Can I live comfortably that way?
It's like, who wants that jump ball first?
Yeah.
All right, I'll jump in, and then Rob, you jump in.
Sure.
I think it's probably one of the most exciting conversations to have. And while you can cruise for the next 12, 18, 24, 36 months, the sand underneath your feet is going to be sucked out into the ocean. And here's the reason why. It is exactly as Rob set it up, that we are in a position where this generational wealth transfer and the data that we're hearing from the next gen of clients, whether it be the first stop, women will be the first stop for inheriting this generational wealth transfer, and then it will subsequently go Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, millennials. They are telling us that they want more from financial advisors. They are telling us that they want to work with an advisor. And I say this all the time because I think it is one of the greatest opportunities that can be amplified in independence. They want an advisor who shares their values, who gets them, and who they want to spend time with outside the office. So in an environment where you're able to build a team that is highly aligned around the values of your firm and serve this multi-generational client as the wealth moves through these various phases, those clients want to be able to work with an advisor. They want it to be a financial life coach. So they want to be able to show up. They want to talk about everything that is highly personal in their life. They want to talk about their goals. They want to talk about insurance. They want to talk about estate planning. They want to talk about financial planning. They want to talk about tax planning. And that firm that has been coasting along, that has been just serving on the center of influence referrals, is going to continue to be successful. They've built up a tremendous amount of trust equity. They will be able to cruise on that. But the firm that is coming up, that is going to be serving that next gen client, is being so intentional about how they are building their brand, how they are designing their CX, how they are leveraging their technology to deliver a highly scalable, highly operationalized, not only experience for their existing clients, but the nurturing of their pipeline. Those firms are sitting in a position where they are going to defy this absence of organic growth in our industry. So if we look at right now, organic growth is 2-3%. That's what those firms that have been cruising are going to continue to deliver. They might get a little bit of benefit depending on where the markets are. But those advisors that are leaning into independence and are taking full advantage of building their businesses without compromise, to serve their clients, to identify all of these pain points and the value that they can deliver throughout that age spectrum, serving more households, serving in this highly curated way, are going to see organic growth rates that are multiples of the industry. And I can say that because we're seeing it with our advisors. Our advisors are growing at 19% organically. They're leveraging technology. They're focused on building their brand. And this is not, this is where the industry is going, which is why I think this third phase in our industry is going to be the era of amplified independence.
If I can actually just expand on that, I think, Shannon, you said, the clients want, and I agree. Everything you said, I totally agree. But I think it's also the client's need, right? What we're seeing with this massive wealth transfer. I mean, we're talking about $140 trillion of total household wealth in the U.S. Half of that is baby boomers, and if you drill down even further, roughly 10% of those baby boomers, they control probably 3/4 of that wealth. So what's happening is there's this transfer of significant complexity going on, right? And that's where that need comes in. So there may be that next generation that is just trucking along, and all of a sudden they're inheriting significant wealth. There's a need. There's really a necessity for significant, experience and resource and intellectual capital of how to help that client navigate through the complexity in their situation. And what we see out there is, going back to your example of a $300 million firm, they can continue to keep moving along, and they probably will see, to your point, Shannon, the anemic single-digit growth numbers, organic growth numbers. We're actually, as a firm, we're closer to Shannon numbers, of course, as well. But I think it's one in which they're gonna run out of bandwidth. They're gonna run out of, what we've seen is a lot of the resources in that organization are finite. And the problem being is they continue to build out resources. The larger firms continue to do the same, but they have more capital. They have more intellectual capital within their firm, and they're continuing to evolve. And what we're seeing is this migration of firms that are, I'll even call it sub $1 billion, that are looking and saying, I don't know if I can continue to be sustainable, like continue my business model, unless I find a partner that's going to help me in areas of complexity that I just don't have that expertise. So they have a choice. They certainly have a choice to keep doing what they're doing, or if they want to evolve while this industry is evolving. And again, this transfer of wealth and all the hurdles or the headwinds we've been talking about are happening. We're seeing a lot of these firms partner with organizations that have a significant amount of breadth in their resource capability and intellectual capital, and they continue to build.
Yeah, I'll jump in here too to put some points on it. We've been hearing a lot about organic growth, like Shannon and Robert said. But you know what? People need to be worried about organic gone, because if you're not doing certain things, you will see assets flow out of your firm. So even the ones that are serving baby boomers, they're one an experience as well. Listen, my dad, and my mother, by the way, one is 65, another was 63. They got TikToks, they have Instagrams, they have the Facebook. They put a "the" on the. We got the Facebook, right? I mean, so
Wait,
they.
it's not the Facebook?
Yeah, no, yeah, right. But they want a different type of experience too. That overall advice experience. I mean, so it's only going to get more magnified once you progress through the generations. I'm Generation X, and we millennials and so forth, in particular the Zers. So we can't discount even those firms have been locked in with the same clients for a number of years. They're wanting a different experience as well, one they can advocate for. What you don't want as a firm is for your current client base saying, you know what, I just had my when Harry met Sally moment. I want what they're having over there, right? And that's what I'm talking about. Organic get gone if you know it, and that's preventing your organic growth.
So I'm interested because my parents are similar age; they're in their 70s, and I think how much fun it can be to work alongside somebody who saved all their life to have this pile of money, and you get to help them decide what they do with it, whether they give it, share with grandkids, how they live their life. Like that's a fun job to have. It's an important stewardship of that job, but I do think that it's a unique position that financial advisors are in today, which is helping guide and make sure that they maximize the value of a life's work, right? Going back to the values thing, because I think if you look at Concurrent Planning's website, RFG Advisors website, or Integrated Partners website, you all do a very good job of putting sort of core values and values of the firm first. But I'm curious for you, Dr. Cherry. When I was 22, I didn't know my values. If I knew what they were, they probably weren't the ones I have today. Probably not ones I want to mention because college kid have fun. So how does a up and coming person identify the values that are most important to them and sort of what type of firm they want to work for?
Great question. I think value right now for everyone, but particularly younger generations, but everyone, and this is for advisors, is to incorporate the humanity of money in your practice. Folks may not come to the table knowing they know their value. They just haven't been asked the right way. There's so many. I've had that experience too, where somebody would say, I haven't been asked that question. That's a good question. And so the connection that people are looking for is different. They are waiting to be asked these connective questions and things that they can feel. The issue has been, and that's been absent. And some folks, particularly advisors, they say, you know what, I don't want to get into all this touchy-feely stuff, as far as understanding the values, understanding the experiences, cultures, all of this, attitudes about money. I don't want to get into all that. But that has everything to do with the numbers. If you jump into the numbers with no meaning or no value or no purpose, then then you don't have that connective experience that people are looking for, because they're looking for the feeling and the numbers together.
I'd
I
love to
understand that.
tack in on that as well, because I think, Dr. Cherry, you are absolutely 100% correct. And this is where this phase is so exciting for advisors and is so important for independence, is it is giving permission to advisors to radically reevaluate how they spend their time. So it is still shocking. This number has not budged in the 7.5 years that I've been at RFG. 80% of an advisor's time is spent on non-revenue generating activities, which means they're not fully leveraging the technology. They're not leveraging the interoperability that you can build in a system that is designed around the client journey, designed around amplifying that one-to-one relationship with the client. So there's this opportunity to kind of radically overhaul how you spend your time in order to have the bandwidth and the creative flexibility and space to demonstrate your humanity. And there's no greater way to do that than the expression of your brand. So, what does your brand stand for? Why do you work with advisors? How does that align with your mission, your vision, and your values? And it extends to one of the most important catalytic forces for advisors, which is the talent on their team. So, this is where all of this is kind of circling back to make this moment so incredibly exciting. I pulled Dave DeVoe's report. So his like annual M&A outlook that we all have here. And in this report, it says the number one concern for advisors and for RIAs is attracting talent. That's the most important factor in actually being able to build an experience for your clients and demonstrate those values. How are you going to attract people to your team who are going to be inspired by the values, be inspired by this journey, be inspired to build your firm? So, this talent piece of the equation is a hugely important competitive differentiator for the advisor of the future.
I totally
I
agree.
would say, if I can jump in, Ryan, I agree with everything you guys are saying here. I think it goes back to the trust. Um, Advisors need to be a trusted advisor, right? If you really want to distill it down to its core, I want to work with someone I trust. And we talk to, we have a CPA program that is very much a big part of our, the cornerstone of our business model, where we're taking a CPA partner and aligning them with an advisory team, bringing those together. And the CPA firm is actually referring over their highest net worth clients to the advisors. And when we go into the CPAs, it's really interesting. I started at Integrated 7 years ago, and we used to go out to CPAs and say, how many advisors do you think are in this 25-mile radius? And they come up with, I don't know, 1,000, whatever the number is. How many of those advisors would you actually give your own wealth to? And the number back when I started was usually 5, maybe 7. Guess what it is today?
He's a tough judge, folks. He's a tough judge.
Right? 1 or 2. Right? So my point being is there's a lack of trust in our space. There's a lack of, confidence in advisors. And it seems to be kind of, continuing down that role. So I think it's, spending time to really understand, going back to your comments before, Dr. Cherry, in terms of understanding what the goals are, what the fears of a client are. All of those things are very important, but that's one component. The other component is going back to your comment, Shannon, in terms of talent, having the right, resources, the intellectual capital, the partnerships within your organization that are going to be able to help better support that client. Because as I mentioned, with this wealth transfer and the complexity in certain circumstances, there's a lot of opportunity for advisors to essentially help better support that client with some areas that are very nichey. They're probably a little bit obtuse in terms of the opportunities that is there. That might be complex planning. It might be, some wealth transfer tactics, something like that, where your everyday advisor might not have the bandwidth nor the expertise, or they don't know where to go. But that's part of the trust factor. And I think those are very, very important things.
So with that, we've come to about halfway through, and we're going to go to our first lightning round, little palate cleanser. So I have got 5 questions for each of you. They're very simple. They don't know they're coming, folks. But I promise they will all be upstanding. So number 1, at the end of this year, the S&P 500 will be higher or lower. Shannon? This is not a problem choice statement.
Pass. I don't make calls on the market. Too many years as a hedge fund manager.
Everyone else pass?
Not touching that one.
Yeah.
Hot potato.
Tommy Consultant says the advisor that showed 7.5% in 2023. Do we think advisor movement, so advisors either leaving, breaking away, or starting their own firms, will increase or decrease or stay the same in 24?
Breakaway? Increase.
Absolutely. We're in a bull market for independence.
I think it's going to actually accelerate pretty significantly, probably in 25, if I have my guess.
I completely agree, Rob.
Mm-hmm. So go up. M&A. So we talked, Shannon, you brought about talked about the investments that investment firms and others have made in the industry. Interest rates has somewhat paused, or at least halted a little bit of that from the boom days of 2 or 3 years ago. Still, interest rates will be volatile. Do we think M&A activity will continue to increase or decrease over the next couple of years?
Increase.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I agree. I think it's going to be a little bit more selective. Valuations are out of control.
Yeah, I think they increase too as well. However, the breadth of it will, like Rob said, and Shannon and talked about too, it'll slow down just a little bit as far as the breadth is concerned.
Yeah. Debt service payments are not fun at higher interest rates, folks. FSI I saw a news story that they're meeting with OMB about the fiduciary rule. Will we ever actually have a passed fiduciary rule, or we will not or that will be on the books? Or is this something that the industry will continue to kick the can down the road?
That's your next webinar, where you can have all the compliance people on here debating that topic.
I remember the days of 2016. Those were fun.
Well said, Shannon.
Yeah, I'll actually say very quickly, we don't have a industry-wide fiduciary rule. We have one embedded in the 40 Act, folks that kind of just mull over just a little bit. So it's down there a little bit. It is. And then number 2, as a profession, a financial planning profession, if you hold the CFP, then yes, you are a fiduciary. So We do
Absolutely.
need one with more teeth. That said, having people's best interest is embedded in our current laws, or
Yes.
I would say this 40 Act is in there. But if you hold the CFP, then you're beholden to it.
Going back to that same thing about trust. All right, question number 5, final question. Would Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce make it to the kickoff as a couple of the 2024 football season?
Yeah. I think I got a heart.
Yes.
I'm not going to answer that. I have a daughter that will kill me if I'm not sure which way I could go on
Hey,
that one. So.
hey, the Swifties sign up was pretty strong, so you want to be careful there.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, one question we got from the audience before we dive into other topics was some industry experts have said you should work with people 10 years older and 10 years younger to sort of, get a broad swath of different generations, and maybe the young kids can teach you some cool music and new apps, and the older people can share you some wisdom. Do you think that's valid these days, or is all sort of just rubbed together?
Ryan, is it a
I,
talent question or a client question?
I think it's an advisor question as far as if I want to be relevant, stay current, um, how do I do so as a practitioner?
yeah, I
Dr.
for
Cherry, you
sure have
take it.
I would say multi-generational approach for sure. If you don't have that in your practice, then your practice has a soft point, a soft place for sure, and you just tighten that up. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean we know the statistic, whereas younger generations of the client that's still there, 90% of them, they take a hike afterwards, right? So they're not staying at the firm. So having a multi-generational firm, and we'll get to this later, Shannon talked about it, you were talking about succession planning. In order for succession planning to be successful and your current planning, then somebody has to be able to, a Gen X or a Z or a millennial, they have to walk into the office and say, oh, okay, like it or not, this is kind of hip. Is your feng shui together? Are you doing things, with newer, fresher vibes? What's going on in here? Is the advice modern? All right, I'm getting flexible, all of that. So, to the point, yes, having generational, staff and support systems inside your practice is essential.
I
I
would
mean, I
add
think it's
one
part of
thing
the.
to
Go ahead,
go
Shannon.
ahead, Rob. No, go ahead.
Thank you. I think it's, you want a sustainable business model, you probably do need to have multi generations in terms of the client base. And I agree with Dr. Cherry in terms of, that second generation that's inheriting the first generation's wealth. I mean, again, it goes back to the trust thing. You may have the capability, you may be a very sound advisor, but if you're not connecting with that second generation, then what do you have? Right. And it all is connected. And again, if someone is just an advisor, just focused on that top generation, that's a finite business model.
And I think the interesting and exciting opportunity here is it is basically blowing up conventional wisdom of what was a successful advisory practice of the first generation, which is we have a high minimum and we only work with, someone that is $1 million or more, or $2.5 million or more, whatever they're defining of that AUM threshold. And that was a closed wall model of how to build a successful advisory firm. That is out the window. There has got to be the tech and the team in place to be able to serve those multi-generational households. And it's going to require leveraging a much more intentional marketing strategy. You're going to have a more intentional one-on-one meeting cadence. How are you serving those clients? Are you bringing in advisors that can work with 401k plans, that can work on an hourly basis, that can charge for financial life coaching? So there's just a huge amount of opportunity for disruptive thinking around the business model of an advisory firm that looks very different from these successful, to take your $300 million example, that firm would have defined success as having a vibrant COI network in place, as well as a high minimum. That's going away with this generational wealth transfer. You've got to have the ability to serve that full age continuum from college, honestly, all the way through grandparents.
They had the high back leather chairs and the trophy wall of all the pictures of them with different local people and all the stuff. That's exactly the case.
Hey,
Shannon, I want to
Ryan,
talk. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, just real quick on that. So, one of the things, like if you look at the wirehouses and what they did a while back, very, very well was the training programs. They did an excellent job in the training programs. I think there's a gap on the independent side. There really isn't that much in terms of training programs. Integrated has identified this as an area that we can really help advisors. And whether it's a newer advisor in terms of, the next gen or a very seasoned advisor, we're spending a lot of time having, these discussions about building process and essentially laying that foundation to better serve the clients. Because at the end of the day, going back to how things are different now, I mean, 5 years ago, the markets were screaming and it was about investments for a lot of advisors. It's not like that at all anymore. It's very holistic. You have to be, you can't certainly be all things to all people, but you have to have some breadth in terms of your skill set. And I think that more firms need to build out some curriculum, some processes within their organization to help train that next generation. And again, some of the more senior advisors as well to handle these new complexities.
So, Dr. Cherry, that sounds like a job for the FinServ Foundation. How are you guys
Yeah.
approaching that?
Well, FinServ Foundation, there's the externship that Hannah Moore is a part of. My friend Dominique Henderson, he has a platform doing that as well, trying to fill these gaps. I mean, that is the question: is how are we bringing in not just the next generation? I'm 45. How are we bringing this generation? People like to skip Gen X now.
A young
People, I got a couple of gray hairs the last 6 months right down here, but but I would say Gen X is always being skipped. But let's focus there before we get to the other generations. But let's just talk about those young generations coming in, right? Huge gap there. The wirehouses did a pretty good job with the training, but they were very selective with the training, and then also incomplete to where we are now. Because the wirehouses had teams, they still do, and it was very selective, picking and choosing who they find successful. And then also too, now that particular training is not going to fit. All right. So how do we do that? Well, number one is that the firms themselves have to believe, okay, that they are the teachers of experience. All right. You are not going to get, let me say this with all my chest with all the firms that are listening out there. If you're looking for a professional with 5 or 7 years experience, let's take 5 right there, and they want to get right into client facing and producing and talking to clients, maybe your B clients, your C clients, that doesn't exist. And the reason why it doesn't exist is that for those that are with those firms already, they've been cultured, they've been a team member, they've been assimilated into the philosophy of the firm, and they've been trained up, and they feel like they're a part of the firm, so they're not going anywhere. All right. So that means the firms have to invest in that first 3-year period, get their culture right. We got firms right now, a massive amount, that say, "Oh, I don't want to do culture." Okay, well, you're going to find people hitting the door, and you're not going to get the young talent. And then you might as well do the trading places. You might as well sell, right? Because you're not going to have a firm. All right.
Mortimer.
So it's very imperative that firms, like Rob was saying, I'm sure Shannon's going to chime in here, is that first 3 years of a young professional's exposure to the profession is very important, and they will stay if they feel like they're a part of the team.
I just sorry, Ryan. I know we haven't moved on yet, but I do want to just hit on that. So I totally agree with what you're saying. We've actually built out what we call a second chair program. It's certainly for the younger generation, but it's also almost that tweener, that in between, where our very senior successful advisors, they want to essentially move up market in terms of the type of clients that they're working with. And that provides an opportunity for us to bring what we call a second chair in to work with, say, that next client segmentation down. But it's not just about bringing somebody in. It's about making sure that there's consistency, going back to your comment, Dr. Cherry, in terms of culture, which I'm going to take towards like process, philosophically, how are we aligned, right? Because there's so many different flavors of independence. There's so many different flavors of advisors just in general. And the philosophy changes from firm to firm. So we're very focused on finding very much philosophically aligned advisors that want to work with us and build process and continue to evolve and hone their craft. And that could be, very senior advisors, second chair, even that younger generation. But there needs to be process. And I think that's one of the downsides of independence is that, if you came out of the wires, you came out of that corporate world, there was some level of training. And I agree with you, it's a very different training structure, but there was process. And I think on the independent side, sometimes there's some excellent advisors that didn't really have a lot of process until, pretty far down the path in terms of their career. And I think there needs to be a focus on the foundation early on of building process. And it seems like there's a bit of a gap there in our industry.
So Shannon, RFG, when y'all bring on a new advisor, what process do y'all bring them onto?
I mean, it's the core of what we do is we've designed a platform that really empowers an advisor to step into an ecosystem where they have all of the support services from technology, compliance, investment management, branding and marketing, advisor coaching, strategic planning, resources for succession planning, growth capital, all of that. And it's very intentional. And one of the examples of how we have helped advisors step into that process is we did some upstream thinking. And as you talk to advisors, they're going to immediately surface, and it's confirmed here in Dave DeVoe's report, that their number one pain point is talent. How do I find them? How do I retain them? How do I train them? How do I career path them? How do I keep them motivated? How do I build the culture? It goes on and on because it's really hard. And it is very far removed from the reason why an advisor becomes an advisor, which is to serve their clients. So what we built is a talent agency within RFG. We started with the CSAs, and it was an organic experiment where we just were hearing this friction and this frustration from the advisors. And we thought, let's go ahead and build RFG University and we'll do some coaching. And that was so successful that we evolved it into a mentorship program. And that was so successful that we evolved it into a talent agency where we're going out and we're sourcing these candidates, we're interviewing them, we're then bringing them onto the advisors team. They are getting trained, they're getting mentored, they're a part of a community of other CSAs for best practice sharing and feeling like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And then the next phase of that has been about building pods so that there's a high degree of redundancy. There's an ability for an advisor to always have the support when their CSA is going out on vacation or maternity leave. So it is taking this notion of how do I turn what is one of the advisor's largest obstacles to success, largest obstacles to operationalizing and scaling their business. And what we designed very early on in this program was a CSA should be a force multiplier for their advisor. They should be helping to drive growth. They should be helping to deepen and engage those clients and help convert those prospects. Empower them to have technology that only they get to use. Empower them to be constantly coached up and trained up so that they feel really motivated by the work they're doing. It's not just walking in and checking all the boxes that need to be done and ACATing new client accounts or setting up annual reviews. It is taking ownership over that role. And it has been transformative as we look at those contributing factors, what is driving organic growth for our advisors. This talent agency and giving them trained up resources that is focused on operationalization, focused on efficiency, focused on scaling up has been a game changer.
So I want to just dive a little bit further. You mentioned technology a couple of times. What are some of the technologies that your firm has implemented? I know Jordan is there, and I know you have a whole team that does this. But are there any technologies that stand out that really have been impactful for for the firm and really getting this process moved forward?
The first one is around mindset. We set early on in building the platform that we wanted to be a client experience company first and a technology company second. And we wanted technology to touch every facet of the platform, including how we operate as a corporate team. So we built a tech stack for advisors down to the desktop. We do all the in-house desktop support, and then a very robust technology experience that is designed to amplify that one-to-one relationship and minimize the friction so that advisors can flip that equation of 80% of my time is spent on non-revenue generating to 80% of my time is spent on deepening client relationships and prospecting. So for us, it is, I think, some of the best of breed technology: Orion, Salesforce, eMoney, Money Guide Pro. We obviously have built a great solution for digital client paperwork processing that involves Precise FP and Docupace. We've got the whole experience around a marketing engine we call Pathfinder that's built on top of FMG. We are very comfortable with disruptive technology, so we're out there in front with FP Alpha. We're doing a lot of beta testing and trialing with Dispatch. We're working with Financial, which I think is a really exciting new client portal. So for us, the mindset around technology was we want to constantly be disrupting ourselves. We want to be seeking innovation. We want to be out there as raising our hand of we'll beta test the next new technology that's going to drive always with that eye towards deepening the client relationship and helping the advisor operationalize and scale.
Well, you set me up for lightning round number 2. So I've listed out some of, to Rob, your point, some more diversified services that people will be looking for in a financial advisor. And you just mentioned FP Alpha. So estate planning services. Over the next few years, do you think more clients or less clients will be looking for estate planning services?
Definitely more.
Definitely more. Tax planning, tax optimization, tax loss harvesting.
These are layups. Definitely more.
Yeah. Hey, it was at the end of the hour. I'm trying to be nice. Decumulation strategies and services. Increase.
More.
Healthcare planning and support. I have Christine from Caribou is on my panel next week at access to alternative and non-liquid assets.
More.
Yeah. So all signs point to up.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's great. So Shannon, you definitely, the firm has no fear in bringing in technology and figuring out what works and making it, and hiring the people and bringing the people on to make it work. That's the part, too often people buy technology, look 2 years later and say, well, where did I get the ROI from that technology spend? Because they wasn't somebody driving it forward into the firm.
But that goes back to, go ahead, Shannon. Sorry.
And then Rob, take it over. We've hired 2 really interesting new positions. One is like, we jokingly refer to her as our director of failure, but she's a process integrator. And her job on our corporate team is literally in every functional team to sniff out non-scalable, non-repeatable process to help us at the firm level, at the platform level, to walk the walk that we're preaching to advisors around operationalizing and scaling up. And the second is around sales data enablement. So this concept of, we are all drowning in data. That's a whole nother webinar around the future state of technology platforms and leveraging data to serve up for advisors next best action and dashboards around how they're spending their time and where their enterprise value is being created and what is attributable to. But this drowning in data, so we have hired to our corporate team someone who's in charge of director of failure and someone who's in charge of data with an eye towards that, like the future for advisors, the future for platforms is going to look very different than it does today. And those firms and those advisors that are recognizing the need to constantly be okay with disrupting yourself and be okay with change, I think are in a much better position culturally from a mindset to be able to win as this generational transfer and this just explosion of technology unfolds.
This is not a business or industry that you joined to go make the donuts every day for 40 years and get your gold watch. It's a very different one. Rob, you had something you wanted to mention.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about, Shannon, is it goes back to that scenario, Ryan, you threw out there of a $300 million firm. You hired talent, Shannon. You hired people. You have the resources to go out and identify what really works within your business model, right? Same thing with us. We're always focused on giving advisors back time, right? The biggest impediment in our mind to their success is time. If we can provide that back to them, then that's a big part of the battle, if you will. But hiring talent, identifying the trends in the industry, utilizing data properly, that requires resources, that requires capital, and certainly. And I'm not suggesting a $300 million firm cannot be sustainable. I'm just saying that as the industry on the independent side evolves, it does require a great deal of resources, a great deal of talent, because I think what we're going through at Integrated is we took 2024 as a year of simplification, right? Because our business model has a lot of moving parts and we want to make sure that we streamline it, right? And part of that is bringing in talent, having the existing talent come in and really make sure we understand what, from a technology standpoint, what tech we're using. Is it the right tech? Because again, the right tech 5 years ago might not be the right tech today or certainly in the future. And how is that positioned, right? And then from there, identifying the right type of applications, the right type of resources, but then applying those resources into your business model, trying to keep it from being wildly complex. I mean, this is not easy. And I think as the industry evolves and the competition evolves, you got to stay ahead of the curve. And I find it to be very hard unless you have some of that scale in order to go out and identify the right talent, bring the talent in, make sure, we're all pretty well connected in the industry to go out and understand, hey, this firm is utilizing this type of technology and spending time with our peers to understand what's working and what's not.
Yeah,
Rob, go ahead.
I'll jump in just real quick, which is, too, you don't want your client base to OT. And they're like, what is that? It's OB overtech. And so
Sure.
you want, I like your point about, Rob, like with simplification. Now, the only quilt that I like is, I live in here in Green Bay when it's cold, is to have as a blanket. And that Michael Kitz's tech map, oh my gosh, it looks like a quilt. I mean, but I can't get warm with that, right? What is my point? My point is that, people like to see and feel human beings. All right. And that's the original form of tech, is invest in your talent. So we have information technology, that's an it, but you want to have intentional technology, and you also want to invest in talent. So those are the three its, right? And so that helps people get it, right? And it could be something as simple as workflow and developing a video that says literally 10, 15, 20 seconds, and them seeing your face, hearing your voice, right? And that's just a workflow. So that's what I'm talking about, being intentional with your tech, but also having that human experience, because they meaning the clients, they want humanity, they want effective advice, and they want to be connected with. So being over teched, that could be a disservice to some folks.
Well, this has been good. We are at time. I want to give everybody a last word. So, Rob, I'll start with you. What's one takeaway from today that you would want the audience to walk away with? If they were to sit back at their desk and get started on something, what would it be?
Well, it's like anything. You can, there's two sides to a coin. You can look at what's happening in the market where, everything is shifting. You can look at this as it's a little exhausting, because it probably is, but it's also a huge opportunity, right? I see this as such a wonderful, wonderful place to be in our industry. I look across the wealth management landscape, and there's nowhere else I want to be other than on the independent side. I think there's such a great opportunity for all of us here and everybody on the call, really to better support clients. And because we're independent, because we have more flexibility with our business models, it's just a great way to be able to support clients.
Shannon, what about you?
Pull out your cell phone and film your authentic story. Advisors need to get comfortable telling their authentic story, because that is what is going to connect them to their existing clients and to the next gen. And the second piece of advice is this is the most exciting time to get independent because you can't truly build your firm and your CX and tell your authentic story and build your business without being independent. So tell your story, film yourself, get comfortable, and it's time to get independent.
And as the only doctor in the house, I will let you have the last word with Dr. Cherry.
All right. Well, I will say, uh, bottle up your hot sauce. And what is that? That is bottle up that value, and you can sprinkle that on everything. They put that stuff on everything, but I kind of made it clean there, right? But you can put that on everything. And what does that mean? Advance the human condition through financial advice and education. If you're doing that, then people, you can bottle that up and sprinkle that on everything. You get that right, people can feel the advice that they're receiving, not only in the numbers, but in humanity.
Well, with that, thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been great. And we'll have a replay. Will go out automatically if you signed up for this webinar. And thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Dr. Cherry, for sharing all of your great insights with us today. It's been very, very important for us to hear.
All right. Thank
Thank
you,
you very
Ryan.
much. Take care.